All right. Hello and welcome, everyone. So before we get into today's video, we have a sponsor for today's video, and that sponsor is the Ridge. As you probably know from our previous spots, they make high-quality compact wallets out of metal and elastic, and I've used and loved them for years. But I've recently been fond of the premium Damascus steel style. If you'd like to get yours, you can head to ridge.com/Brozime and enter code Brozime for 10% off. And thanks so much to the Ridge for sponsoring us once again. All right. Hello and welcome, everyone. So today we are going to be talking about Nidus Prime, finally. Obviously, I've been kind of caught up with the free-to-play through and doing a whole lot of that, but today we are back on the main account, and it's time to talk about Nidus Prime and whether or not this one Forma build for Nidus is worthwhile. However, as you can probably tell by the title of this video, it is not a regular Forma that Nidus wants because, as we all know, Nidus is quite fond of Umbral mods. So, this is the one Umbral Forma Nidus Prime build. Obviously, this is excluding an Xless mod, but to be entirely honest, I don't think that Nidus needs an Xless mod. And if you're going to play Nidus and not weapons platform.warframe, the Xless slot really isn't going to give him much outside of maybe a little tiny bit of strength or a little tiny bit of range. And in the grand scheme, it's not really going to matter. If you want to go further than just one Forma on this Warframe, I would kind of instead suggest that you just don't level Umbral Fiber or get an extra one from Samaris, and then you can put Power Drift or Cunning Drift up here to your liking. I've decided to go with all the maxed Umbral mods because I think it's hilarious, and I love having, just stupid numbers on my Warframe. With that, the rest of this build is pretty much just played out. We have Adaptation in here. I will note, Adaptation, this is pretty much just for Steel Path. If you're not doing Steel Path, feel free to entirely exclude Adaptation because you are not going to die with this build under basically any circumstances outside of a teammate getting rad procced if you are in any non-Steel Path mission. Like, Nidus just is not going to die with the 3 Umbral mods on him kind of by default. So we got that going for us for the purposes of just Steel Path, which we are, of course, going to show footage for in this video. When you combine Adaptation with Parasitic Link, you get 99% damage reduction before your armor damage reduction. And it makes you pretty much completely impossible to kill. You'll see from just the Steel Path footage, like, I'm being bombarded with bullets at pretty much all times, and my health doesn't move. And that's just due to the absolutely hysterical amount of damage reduction that we have on Nidus Prime, where we don't have to abuse shield gates like a lot of squishier Warframes do. We just stand in front of enemies and just take it for large amounts of time through thick and thin, just absolutely being bombarded, and it just kind of doesn't matter. There's only 1 or 2 times in like the 20 minutes the survival that I did that I even go down to about half health. And then I just go shoot right back up whenever I stand in my 4, so it's not really a big deal. Other important things on this build, obviously we have, strength from Umbral Intensify, and then a little bit more from Augur Secrets, and then a lot more from Growing Power. Growing Power, absolutely, completely unnecessary here. If you don't have it, just use Steel Charge or whatever. It's not going to matter too much. You don't need to grab Growing Power. I know it's kind of a pain to get. Also, even with that, you really also don't need Augur Secrets for 99.9% of content, because the scaling is what's going to get you there in most cases, and that is going to come from Abundant Mutation. So, this is a passive augment for Nidus. It grants him an additional 200 maximum stacks of mutation for a grand total of 300 mutation stacks. But, for some reason, this has a downside of a 30-second cooldown on Undying. That 30-second cooldown on Undying is actually most of the reason that we go for Adaptation, because whenever you combine Undying even at a 30-second cooldown with all of these other factors, if you somehow manage to trigger Undying by going AFK or whatever, these will ensure that you stay safe regardless. And then we have Stretch for just a little bit more range on our 1 to make sure we can, fill entire hallways with it. And also so that we, can get a little bit further away during Parasitic Link and such and have like a little bit more freedom. That's what Stretch is doing here. And then Continuity, the duration is just helpful for his 4 and his 3. The 2 kind of sacrifices a little bit on this because Larva is not so good with higher duration. It usually wants lower duration. But I think the comfiness of getting, very long durations on Parasitic Link with 93 seconds, and then, of course, 62 seconds on Ravenous, I think is overall worth it. Now, there is a certain thing with this build, and it's that this is not for everyone. Nidus is a particular taste of Warframe. If you just like playing as Nidus, that's going to be what Nidus is for, more so than anything else. Nidus is a very solo-oriented Warframe where he wants to do everything himself. He wants all the kills so he can get all the stacks, and he is a slow playstyle that does not kill super, super fast without additional help from weapons. So you are going to fall behind teammates that are full-on DPS Warframes very, very often. I would highly advise you to pretty much just play in solo if you want to get the most out of Nidus Prime and have the most fun with him. Because he does rely on, getting those stacks, and if teammates are taking your kills all the time, you're just not going to be getting those. There's lots of things that can go wrong whenever you're in a team, and it can really feel like you're not doing very much just due to the more sluggish nature of Nidus's playstyle. That, however, is totally fine. He's a very chill time to take into like a Steel Path Survival or whatever, and you can just kind of hang out and do infested things. I do think that the appearance of his Prime version is really cool. I think I still probably lean a bit closer on his Deluxe as being the cooler of the 2, but I just wanted to show, just the Prime version for this video. And yeah, he's a very fun playstyle. There are a number of good weapons for him in the run that we're going to be doing. I have the Bubonico, but I don't use it. And then I have the Sinoid Gamma Core. This is just to basically apply magnetic and viral and heat for a bunch of just damage vulnerabilities on the enemies that I'm going to be hitting. It's occasionally necessary to, apply a little bit of heat to strip some armor, use magnetic to get rid of some shields, which is not really going to matter because we're doing a Grenier mission, but that's what the Sinoid Gamma Core is being used for here. And the Sinoid Gamma Core is also a weapon that is not quite strong enough to take over whenever I'm shooting it at enemies, which means basically it's not a Kuva Nu Core, which is just going to wipe out the entire map of enemies in front of me. Nidus is still going to actually get to do things. And the Sinoid Gamma Core also has some utility in that it can give me energy. Really nice little utility piece for Nidus overall. And then, of course, I am bringing the Glaive Prime. I do use this to kill Acolytes most of the time, as Nidus is, quite slow at killing Acolytes. I would suggest that you just, take whatever tool you like to use to eliminate Acolytes from this mortal plane of existence, whether that's, the Stropha, the Glaive Prime, the Zorus, what have you. There's a bunch of good tools, and you should just bring a selection of them. The Bubonico also, notably, really good at removing Acolytes from the picture. You can equip, any slot has a solution to an Acolyte. Just pick one and then make that your Acolyte solution slot because Nidus is not super great at it. With that, let's just talk about how Nidus plays, I guess, because honestly, in the Simulacrum, you really don't get a feel at all for what Nidus is actually doing. So I'm just going to explain how his abilities work, and then we're going to kick off into the Steel Path Survival. So let's just go for the 1 second. There we go. Okay, so let's go for our regular dudes. Turn off invincibility because it's not going to matter. And basically, all you're trying to do with Nidus is you want to group all the enemies up. And you want to hit your 1. Your 1, whenever it hits at least 4 enemies, will refund itself. And then whenever you have 1 stack, you can use your 3, and it will link to an enemy. This will give you 90% damage reduction, and also you will double cast your 1 from the enemy, and you can hold your 1 actually to see where it's going to shoot out. You can double cast your 1, meaning you only need to really hit 2 enemies per cast in order to fully refund all of your energy. You just want to hit enemies and build up a bunch of stacks. When you have 3 stacks, or at least 3 stacks, you can hit 4, and that's going to put down your Ravenous. This gives you a lot of health regeneration and also spawns maggots, which will jump on enemies and explode whenever you use your 1 on them. This gives you some extra damage, and in addition to that, you can hold your 1 to find out where the maggots are so you can get a better idea of where you should be aiming. Yeah, basically, you're going to use the combination of your 1 and your 3 most times to take down a bunch of enemies very, very quickly. You can see this damage is not too crazy. Like, it's not actually even particularly very good against these level 180s. But that's why we have the extra 200 stacks of scaling for us, because as we get higher and higher in stacks, it's going to get easier and easier to kill these enemies. The biggest problem, and a thing that is actually solved entirely by Steel Path, is that the amount of energy that you need is going to be really, really high if you don't have enough enemies. And that's also, not shown very well by the Simulacrum, because the Simulacrum has a limit of 20 enemies. And normally, especially in Steel Path, there are going to be far, far more enemies than that. And you're just going to be, also one-tapping a lot more enemies if you're in the regular star chart as opposed to anything else. And obviously there I use like a little bit of armor stripping just to speed this up. But yeah, generally you're just a completely unstoppable Warframe that you just fuck shit up. You slam your 1, you put spikes in enemies, you just like put down creep and have all of your maggots come out. I think it's a really fun playstyle that's like pretty simple. But it just feels like you're the boss. You're walking around just doing whatever you want because it's impossible to take you down. And then you just go to town and kill dudes. It's a lot more, obvious on the Steel Path mission that, like, it's going to be nearly impossible for Nidus to be killed. But yeah, that's the general gist of what his abilities are. You're going to, group enemies up with larva, hit them with your 1, use your 3 at all times for that extra 90% DR and also the double casting of your 1, and then throw your 4 down in areas where it seems nice to stand and hang out so you can get that healing regen. Of note, on here, I am using Grace and Arcane Energize. Grace makes this a lot more comfy because you can just count on this 9% chance for 6% health regeneration. And this is going to make it absolutely trivial. You're not going to need to make sure you're hanging out in Ravenous in order to get that really large amounts of health regen. So you can run Grace. It's obviously a bit of an expensive arcane, but it makes it super, super simple to just hang out. And then Energize, really not required for this at all. You mostly just want to have Xeneric. But Energize does also help a little bit with the energy troubles that you might run into from time to time. You can, of course, replace this with things like Consequence to move very fast, Nullifier if this is like a concern for you to get Magnetic procced, lots of different things that you can run in here. Just not any of the shield-based ones like Aegis. You can get away with Guardian or Awakening if you're going to use pistols a bunch. Kind of an open slot in this case, but I just go with Energize. Also, as a cheaper option to Grace, it's actually really worth noting here. Arcane Victory, you can just make sure you get some headshot kills, and you get 75% chance for a 3% health regeneration for 9 seconds. This is also just an option if you're really wanting to put health regen in here, but aren't going to, dump the plat into Arcane Grace just for Nidus. But yeah, it's only 1 Umbral Forma, and Umbral Forma is, of course, much more common now because we, of course, have the rotation from the Steel Path shop. So I think it's pretty worthwhile to just toss 1 Umbral Forma in him. Or no Umbral Forma if you want to do the unranked Umbral Fiber. That's also an option. You can do a 0 Forma Umbral Nidus build and just do this. Obviously, the 10 extra points goes a long way. Way less armor, so you're going to have to be maybe a little bit more careful. But I think overall, it's not going to change that much with how you play him. So yeah, it's just a good time. Enjoy the Steel Path run. It's been fun to play Nidus a little bit more and just kind of see what he's doing and how he's doing on Steel Path. He definitely performs better than I was imagining he would, which is nice to see. I would love it if he scaled a little bit harder or had some armor stripping tools in his arsenal so you didn't have to go, kind of outside of his kit in order to get a little bit of armor stripping, even if it's just from some heat procs. But yeah, and you can always, of course, change his 4 to something that strips armor if you want your damage output to be a lot more consistent. He does, of course, usually have at least 200% strength on the build, so you can get, you can get away with a whole lot, whether that's just going to be Fire Blast or what have you. But yeah, that is Nidus Prime. He's good. I enjoy him. He's also the highest selling Prime Access ever, apparently, which is a big surprise to me. But that's probably a topic for another video. Anyway, enjoy the Steel Path run, and I will see you tomorrow.
Scans show Grenier are harvesting Kuva nearby. Set off the alarms to draw them out and steal their Kuva catalysts. Predictable. As expected, Grenier have shut down the environmental systems, sending modified life support capsules. Use these to sustain your environment or attach Kuva catalysts to begin harvesting. Extraction is available if you need it.
system.
option. Extraction is ready. Life support levels. Extraction is your best option. Running out of time. Consider extraction. The longer you fight, the more successful we will be. Extraction is ready.